I have never been afraid of hard work. I have been afraid of hard work pointed at the wrong target. That is a different problem. A man can wake up early, stay disciplined, keep his promises, do everything society praises, and still spend his life feeding a machine that can never make him free. That is the danger I want to talk about. Not laziness, not recklessness, not fantasy. I am talking about the polished form of dependence that millions of people mistake for safety. Most people think the great financial risk is failing. I think one of the greatest risks is succeeding too well inside a system built to rent your life by the hour. That sounds harsh. It comes with air conditioning. It comes with a title. It comes with performance reviews. It comes with direct deposit. It comes with enough comfort to keep you from panicking and enough dependence to keep you from escaping. That is why so many intelligent people stay inside it. They do not feel trapped. They feel responsible. If you do not find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. People repeat that line as if it were a slogan for a coffee mug. I never meant it that way. It is not decoration, it is structure. If your cash flow stops the moment your labor stops, then your life is supported by motion, not by ownership. You may earn well. You may be admired. You may have a schedule full of evidence that the world needs you. I still call that fragile, because the whole arrangement depends on one thing staying true forever. You must continue selling time. Time is the only inventory you can never restock. That is why the worker model is so dangerous even when it appears successful. Imagine a merchant who opens his shop every morning with a small fixed number of units on the shelf. He can improve the store. He can improve the lighting. He can improve the packaging. He can even charge a higher price. But once the units are gone, the day is over. That is the modern employee in a nicer costume. Your inventory is your attention, your energy, your hours, your health, and your willingness to keep repeating the cycle. The world tells you this is normal. The world rarely asks whether normal is a good bargain. You can become a highly compensated professional and still remain trapped in the same physics. A lawyer can bill more per HR. A doctor can bill more per H. Or a consultant can bill more per HR. The ceiling still exists. The body still has to show up. The mind still has to perform. The machine still shuts off when the operator walks away. I do not say this to insult labor. I say it to separate labor from ownership. Those are not the same category. One creates income, the other creates independence. And people spend decades confusing the two. Part of the confusion begins long before adulthood. Most people are educated to become excellent participants in systems they do not own. Think carefully about what school rewards. It rewards obedience. It rewards punctuality. It rewards memory. It rewards compliance with timelines set by someone else. It rewards your ability to complete tasks you did not design for rewards, you did not negotiate. That is very useful training if the end goal is to produce reliable workers. It is not the first training I would choose if the end goal were financial freedom. Children are rarely taught how to read a balance sheet with emotional seriousness. They are rarely taught how taxes shape behavior. They are rarely taught why ownership beats wages over long periods. They are rarely taught the difference between making money and building assets. They are taught how to become employable. That is not the same thing as becoming free. You can be very employable and very dependent at the same time. In fact, a lot of people are then the paycheck enters and the programming deepens. A paycheck does more than pay bills. It calms the nervous system. It creates rhythm. It tells the brain that order has been restored for another 2 weeks or another month. That emotional effect is stronger than most people admit. The paycheck is one of the most powerful sedatives in modern life. It can make a person tolerate a structure that would otherwise offend his intelligence. He starts measuring safety by the arrival of the deposit, not by the strength of the system under his life, not by how many assets he owns, not by how many income streams can survive without him, just by whether the next check is coming. That is not safety. That is dependency made emotionally pleasant. A lot of workers never notice this because they are too busy surviving the rhythm to study it. They think they are building stability. In reality, many are building a life with one oxygen line. The employer changes direction. The industry shifts. The technology changes. The health weakens. The company restructures. And suddenly the person discovers that reliability was not ownership. It was only a temporary arrangement. That is the tragedy of the employee trap. It feels solid until the moment it is tested. Now let me move from psychology to arithmetic, because arithmetic is less sentimental than people are. If you earn primarily through wages, the system reaches into your income early and often. Taxes do not wait politely while you compound. Payroll taxes, income taxes. Layer after layer of friction, money leaves before it has had a chance to become capital. That matters more than people think. A dollar kept inside your system for longer is a different kind of dollar. It can earn, it can compound, it can recruit more dollars. A dollar removed early loses that future. Workers are usually trained to celebrate the gross number. Owners learn to care about what survives the journey. That difference sounds small until you stretch it across decades. I once said my secretary paid a higher tax rate than I did. People laughed. People got angry. People wanted to turn it into a moral speech. I was simply pointing to a map. The system does not reward labor and ownership the same way. It never has. Labor income is exposed. Capital is often treated differently. The owner does not always avoid tax. He often gains something even more valuable: timing. Structure optionality. The worker is usually paid on someone else's calendar, through someone else's rules, inside someone else's definitions of value. The owner has more room to decide when value is realized, how gains are structured, and how retained capital keeps compounding before being touched. That difference becomes enormous over time. Then inflation enters and exposes the worker model even more brutally. Prices move quickly. Wages move slowly. That is the quiet violence. The worker waits for permission to catch up. The world does not wait. Food rises. Housing rises. Insurance rises. Services rise. Medical costs rise. The paycheck eventually rises too, perhaps. By then, the gain is already limping behind the damage. A person can earn more this year than last year and still feel poorer in real life. That is not imagination. That is the mismatch between how wages adjust and how reality reprices. Owners at least have a path into the upside. A business can reprice. Equity can revalue. Real assets can adjust. The worker, whose whole financial identity is salary, experiences inflation mostly as shrinking breathing room. That is why so many middle-class households feel exhausted, even when their careers look respectable on paper. They are running harder on a moving walkway that is quietly shifting backward. Now we arrive at the most important distinction in the whole discussion: linear income versus nonlinear wealth. Most labor is linear. An hour is sold. An hour is paid. A task is completed. A reward is given. There is nothing shameful in that. There is simply a ceiling. Wealth at scale usually comes from structures where effort and output are no longer chained in the same direct way. A business system, a piece of equity, a royalty stream, a distribution channel, software, brand media, a product that can be sold repeatedly without recreating the whole labor process each time. That is where freedom begins to appear, not because effort disappears, but because effort changes form. Early on, ownership often looks worse than employment. It looks uncertain, it looks awkward, it looks underpaid. That is why most people abandon it too early. The paycheck offers immediate applause. Ownership often offers delayed asymmetry. The mature mind chooses delayed asymmetry. The impatient mind chooses immediate certainty. That is the split. The worker asks how much I can earn this month. The owner asks what I can build that still has value next month even if I do nothing tomorrow. That is a completely different question. I do not care how intelligent someone is if he never asks it. He may remain very productive and very trapped. This is why I have always loved equity. Equity is an answer to the body limit. If I own a great business, I do not need to ring every cash register personally. I do not need to carry every box. I do not need to persuade every customer face to face. The system keeps working, the asset keeps moving. That is what ownership does. It lets your earlier judgment continue producing after the hour is ended. That is how life starts decoupling from the clock. People hear this and jump to the wrong conclusion. They think I am saying quit your job and chase fantasy. I am not saying that. I am saying stop confusing the paycheck with the destination. Your job may be your first investor, fine. Use it, but do not worship it. Treat the salary as raw material. Treat it as bridge capital. Treat it as fuel for the engine that can eventually replace dependence on the next deposit. That is a very different mental model. Most employees do something tragic with raises. They use raises to decorate the cage. A nicer car, a bigger mortgage, more status spending, a lifestyle that requires the next raise. Then they call themselves more successful. I call them more expensive to maintain. Every unnecessary liability hires your future labor in advance. That is what people miss. Consumption is not always pleasure. Sometimes it is a contract against your future freedom. The owner thinks differently. The owner asks what each extra dollar can become. Can it become a share of a productive business? Can it become seed capital? Can it become an acquisition? Can it become a system? Can it become another worker on my side? Most people spend soldiers and then the owner recruits. Then there is status. Status is one of the most powerful anti-wealth forces in professional life. Corporations understand this perfectly. If they cannot fully compensate you in freedom, they can still compensate you in symbolism. A better title, a larger office, a closer seat to power, more people reporting to you. Those things feel intoxicating. They are not nothing, but they can become expensive if they make you forget the real question. Does this move me closer to freedom or deeper into dependence? A promotion can increase your income and still postpone your exit. It can increase your prestige and reduce your optionality. It can make the cage feel more luxurious while the bars stay exactly where they were. That is why I do not automatically admire promotions. I ask what they buy. If the promotion gives you capital, leverage, experience, and better ownership access, good. If it simply gives you more identity inside a machine, be careful. A better seat in captivity is still captivity. The same is true of busyness. Modern people wear exhaustion like a medal. They talk about being overbooked as if overwhelm were proof of importance. I have never believed that. Some of the highest value thinkers I have known had calendars that looked almost empty compared to busy executives. They were not lazy. They were protecting attention. Workers are trained to look active. Owners are trained to make correct decisions. Those are different skill sets. If your whole life is reactive, you never build. If you never build, you never leave. This is why weekends matter so much. Most employees use weekends only to recover from the week. That is understandable. But it is also why so many remain stuck. If every spare hour is consumed by recovery, no hour is left for architecture. That is the shift I want people to understand. You're off. Whores are not just recovery time, they are construction time. You do not need to become reckless. You do not need to become theatrical. You do need to begin acting like the chief executive of your own exit. That might mean buying your first productive asset. It might mean learning a distribution skill. It might mean creating a small business line on the side. It might mean developing a piece of media, a small software tool, a licensing path, a niche service with repeatability, or a tiny acquisition habit. The point is not glamour. The point is conversion. You are converting labor income into owned systems. That is the whole bridge. Today, leverage is more accessible than most people realize. Code media, distribution, licensing, digital products, low marginal cost models. A person in the modern world can build forms of leverage that previous generations could not touch without large gatekeepers. Yet many still live as if the only respectable route is to become a more polished employee. That is a failure of imagination. More precisely, it is a failure of ownership imagination. Now I want to say something uncomfortable. If your business depends entirely on your presence, you do not yet own freedom. You may own a better form of labor. That is still progress. But do not confuse self-employment with independence. If the revenue collapses when your body stops, the machine is still too dependent on you. The next step is systems, processes, documentation, delegation, repeatability, automation, where possible, distribution that does not require your personal energy every time. The goal is to stop being the single point of failure. A lot of capable people never do this because they optimize income instead of architecture. Income feels immediate, architecture feels optional. That is a mistake. Architecture is what turns effort into an asset. Without architecture, you are simply a more committed technician inside your own operation. The path out is usually less dramatic than people think. It is rarely a leap. It is a series of deliberate conversions. Reduce useless spending, reduce dependence on appearances, increase asset purchases, increase skill in distribution, increase patience with delayed rewards, build one engine, then a second, then improve resilience, then improve optionality. That is how escape velocity really works. Not with a speech. With sequence, one of the great ironies of professional life is that the system often senses when you are becoming capable of leaving. That is when it offers more comfort, more salary, more recognition, a more flattering title. People think this is proof they should stay. Sometimes it is proof they are becoming expensive to lose. Do not misunderstand me. There is nothing wrong with being paid well. I like money. The question is what the money is doing to your freedom. If the raise accelerates ownership, take it. If the raise simply buys more lifestyle inflation and deeper identity attachment, be suspicious. More income can be a bridge. It can also be anesthetic. At the end of life, almost none of the symbolic rewards survive close inspection. That is why I return to the rocking chair. Old age is a brutal auditor. 890, your excuses lose their makeup. No one cares how polished your slide deck was. No one cares how many flights you took. No one cares how many people called you important. What remains is simpler and much harder to lie about. Did you use your years to build freedom? Or did you use your years to become more comfortable inside dependence? That is the real question. I have seen too many people climb high on ladders, leaning against the wrong wall. From a distance, they look victorious. Inside, They were tired, owned by the calendar, owned by obligations, owned by the expectations of other people, and secretly terrified of any interruption to the salary stream. That is not the life I would want for myself, and it is not the life I would recommend to anyone who claims to care about financial intelligence. Financial intelligence is not just about return percentages. It is about structure. It is about whether the life you are building can survive your absence. It is about whether your effort becomes an asset or dies at the end of the day. It is about whether your best years are being sold in fragments or converted into ownership. That is the entire point. Use the job if you need the job. Use the salary if the salary funds the bridge. But stop calling the bridge the destination. The destination is ownership. The destination is optionality. The destination is waking up and knowing your life is not being sold in pieces, just to keep the machine fed. Judge your progress by a cleaner scorecard. How much of my income survives without my direct labor? How many assets work while I do not? How much of my lifestyle depends on the next deposit? How much leverage have I actually built? How much of my identity is still rented from an institution? Those questions are harder than asking whether you got a raise. They are also the only questions that matter if freedom is the objective. The saddest outcome in finance is not low income. It is misapplied effort. It is years of discipline pointed at a model that can never deliver the thing you secretly wanted. That is the tragedy. Not work without ownership. Not ambition. Ambition in the wrong direction. Not success. Success inside the wrong game. So keep the bridge if you must. Build with seriousness while you cross it. And never forget the one fact that polite society tries hardest to hide. The machine does not love you. It rents you. Your task is to turn those rented years into something that finally belongs to you.